Trujillo, yeah.
How are you today?
I'm doing alright, yourself?
I'm good. So tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. You're a stand-up comic?
Alright, yeah, so I've been doing stand-up comedy now going on 10 years. I just started in Tucson. 10 years ago, my girlfriend moved to Tucson to go to the U of A. I moved out there with her, and you know what I mean? There wasn't really shit to do out there except tell jokes, so I ended up finding a club that I liked, started telling jokes, and took off from there. You know what I mean? The first 2 years was just learning the craft, knowing the business, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And then after that, I started traveling and booking shows all over the place, you know what I mean? So now we're here, and I've been fortunate enough to be the promotions and event manager here, which allows me to do the comedy show here as well. So I'm in a pretty good position to do that. So
Here is
at UltraStar Multi-Entertainment Center, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, comedy, is that a really hard business to actually? I mean, you would think that's competitive and a tough
It definitely is. It's over the years, especially more, it's become more of who you know, and instead of, back in the day, you know what I mean, you could do your time, you could hit open mics every day and then end up reading that right person and then go to the next level, you know what I mean? Now, I've met guys that have been doing open mics for 5-6 years now and still have not went to the next step, and you know what I mean? So it's a real competitive business to cut into. There's even people now where if you want to perform on their stage, you're having to pay them or sell tickets for them, you know what I mean? So it's definitely a competitive business. Me having my own show and venue kind of lets me dictate how the comedy is going to go here, though, you know what I mean? I would never charge comedians to come onto my stage. I would never, you know what I mean, do anything like that. Comedy's about telling jokes and making people happy and laugh, not about, I mean, at the end of the day, it is about making money, but every comedian who's a true comedian's first love is telling jokes and making people laugh, if that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's the heart.
Yeah, definitely, so.
So tell me, where was the tough crowd at? You said you've been doing it 10 years, correct?
Yeah, so some of the tougher, I mean, obviously, even when you go back to like the Kevin Harts and the George Lopez's, they all started doing open mics, and then they would go to do shows. I mean, there was times when I first started that I would go to open mics for bands, you know what I mean? And metal bands would be up there doing their thing, and then I would come on, and they'd expect me to play music, and then I would just start telling jokes, you know what I mean? So some of the harder crowds are people who are unsure of comedy, you know what I mean? Like, so with comedy, especially, unless you're going for like a Bill Cosby or something like that, comedy, there's going to be fucks and you know what I mean, and shits and stuff like that. That's why my show is after 9 p.m. and it's a 21 and older show, you know what I mean? So that's kind of a filter for people to be like, okay, it's a later crowd.
You're grown.
Yeah, you're grown, so that's kind of gives them that edge. I've done shows, though, literally where there's been 6 people in the crowd, and then I've done shows where there's a couple thousand in the crowd, you know what I mean?
So was there a state that actually you were just like, man, I went there and they just didn't even budge?
Yeah, when I was out in New York, man, I went out to New York in not Manhattan, Long Island. I had friends that lived out there, so I went out there and I did a show in 2009, and they just weren't feeling it, you know what I mean? They just weren't, they thought I talked funny, you know what I mean? Like, the place, I mean, I guess the bar maybe in Long Island had a little bit to do with it because it was more of a bougie, uppity type of place, you know what I mean? So they just weren't feeling it, but you just got to get through the material, you know what I mean? A couple people laughed, but I would say that was probably one of my toughest sets that I've done.
Okay. So tell me, what is the no in the business? That's what I always say. Something to you that you like, no, I just don't like that.
So in comedy now, especially with Comedy Man, it's evolving every day, and there's really no off limits. You know what I mean? Like, me personally, I don't do rape jokes. You know what I mean? Like, that's just one thing I don't do. Like, I don't see anything funny in it. I don't see a spin-off on it. You know what I mean? So I just personally stay away from that, and that's literally the only thing I will stay away from is that joke. You know what I mean? But other people, I mean, sky's the limit. There is no rules to comedy. You know what I mean? A lot of people ahead of us, you mean the Richard Pryors and stuff like that, definitely paved the way for us to be able to do the kind of comedy that we really want to do now.
And I was just going to lead to that. As a comedian in the business for 10 years, who is one that you could say that was the one that I looked up to as comedy?
Richard Pryor and Red Fox, 100%.
That's all. Red Fox was
So we have, you know what I mean?
Right.
The Richard Pryor and the Red Fox. Like, I don't play, like, they're some of the pioneers.
Oh my God, that's my mom's favorite.
Yeah, so, I mean, Red Fox, he was famous in the urban community and in neighborhoods before mainstream, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until white people I say white people because they didn't listen to his records. You know what I mean? It wasn't until a club owner got a hold of it and played it for people that he was accepted in that scene. You know what I mean? Same with Richard Pryor. You know what I mean? He kind of started off as a Bill Cosby, not really cussing, and it just wasn't for him. You know what I mean? And then once he broke through and was like, "Fuck it," yeah, then to the top. There is no one. I mean, you can ask anybody who's ever done comedy. Richard Pryor is the greatest point blank period. There is no one else. You know what I mean? Every comedian, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, Asian, everybody reaches to be Richard Pryor. You know what I mean? Like a George Lopez, he's got a specific crowd. You mean he's a big comedian, he's got a specific crowd geared towards Mexicans. You know what I mean?
Right.
Richard Pryor opened that door, and people, he didn't care. And it was a beautiful thing to see white people, Mexican people in the crowd in a time where you went to see comedians of your own race. You know what I mean? So he broke down that barrier, and now the sky's the limit for us.
So, tell me, since this is comic, hip-hop, fashion, who's hot during
So right now, probably, he did a tour last year. He's not done anything this year, but Louis C.K., Louis C.K. is personally one of my favorites. The way he takes jokes and elevates them through, storytelling and just off-the-wall comedy right now, he's pretty good. I personally like Lavelle Crawford and D. Ray Davis that are out there right now. D. Ray is one of my all-time favorites. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, he's just more of that real, in-your-face, doesn't give a shit, talks about his mom getting slapped around type comedy. You know what I mean? So that's kind of another person that I look up to as well in comedy. To my boy Big Rob for helping me do this every single show. This is our 5th year now doing the show, and he's been my host at every show this year, or over the past 5 years, so you know what I mean? Sky's the limit, and we're just going to keep doing the damn thing. Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to get a hold of me, you can just go to my website, dtcomedy.com, you know what I mean? It's got all my information on there, videos, stuff like that, links and info to all the shows that are up and coming, stuff like that, so get a hold of me, David Trujillo on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Yeah.